Today I am from Group 1 and we are assigned to discuss about pictograph. My assigned subtopic is its definition. So what is a pictograph? A pictograph is simply defined as a pictorial symbol of a word or phrase. It is used as the earliest form of writing. Also, pictograph is the representation of data. It represents the frequency of data while using symbols or images that are relevant to it. Also, it is one of the simplest ways to represent the statistical data. Pictograph is made extremely easy as well.
What is the use of pictograph? Pictograph is a form of data visualization which makes your data more memorable. Uses a series of repeated icons to visualize simple data. The icons are grouped in a single line or a grid, with each icon representing a certain number of units. These icons that represent simple data can improve readers' recall of data and even their level of engagement with that data. When to use a pictograph. Pictograph can be useful when visualizing data in infographics, reports, presentations, and resume. But you can also use pictograph whenever you want to make simple data more visually interesting, more memorable, and more attractive. Refresh your resume with pictogram skill summaries. Since pictograph works so well for showing proportions, it contributes more to the summary expertise of the infographic resume. You can use them to show your level of proficiency with each of the skills in your professional toolbox. As you can see, for example, this picture shows resume of Zil Yang. As a graphic designer, he created a very visual resume to show off his graphic design skills. He used a collection simple yet effective pictographs to give a quick snapshot of all of his skills. Second is to spice up a simple bar chart for extra impact. So if your infographic is centered around a simple data set, like a single bar chart, you can use a series of pictographs to make your data a little more visually interesting. As I mentioned earlier, pictographs can help make simple data more memorable and engaging. So take a look at this infographic template. Instead of using an ultra simple bar chart, which could contain as mostly 3 bars, it uses custom pictographs to create a full page, high impact data visualization. Third one is to use simple, meaningful icons to make your pictographs clear. Pictographs works best with their component icons are as simple and universally understood as possible. Think basic symmetrical shapes like stars, circles, and boxes rather than detailed illustrated icons. Single color icons that fit roughly into a square are perfect. Icons that are too detailed will tend to distract readers from the data obscuring it instead of showing it more clearly. At the same time, make sure the icons you choose are relevant to the subject matter of your data. Part 1 is to avoid constructing colors for proportions and percentage. Using constructing colors when representing proportions in pictographs can make your pictograph more distracting and then helpful. Instead, try to use 2 shades of the same color so that readers can more easily compare and contrast the data. Use a darker shade for the percentage you want to highlight and a lighter shade for the remaining units. So these are how to use the pictograph in your own simple but creative way.
Now, we are gonna talk about creating a pictograph. So how do we make a pictograph? First step, obviously, is to collect the data of the category that we want to represent. So we need to collect the data by its appropriate means and then make a list or table of the data and review it afterwards. Second step is to pick your symbol. pick a symbol or picture that accurately represents your data. So for example, if you are drawing a pictograph to represent a TV set's hold, then a symbol of basketball would be highly confusing. So we need to pick our symbol carefully. Third step is to assign a key. Sometimes the frequency of the data is too high. Then one symbol cannot represent one frequency. So we must set a numerical value that one symbol will be able to represent. So this numerical value must be written along with the pictograph. Example, one symbol of a TV represents 500 TV sets. So this will be the key of our pictograph. Fourth step is to draw the pictograph. This would be the final step, and we need to draw two columns that represent the category of our data and then draw the actual symbols that represent the frequencies. So remember that the symbols can be drawn as fractions as well. Fifth step is to review our data to make sure it correctly represents the information that we want to relay. And don't forget to check the labeling of your graph. So that's all. Thank you.
Advantages of a pictograph. It expresses a large amount of information or data in a simple form. Since they make use of symbols, pictographs attract the attention of the viewers. On the other word, it is an attractive way to represent the data. Like for the example, if we were about to represent the data of sold apples in month of January to April, it is easy to understand if we use pictograph because we're just showing the symbol or picture of an apple, and each apple does have respective value. And also, the pictograph are easy to read since all the information is available at one glance. And since it is universally used, they do not require a lot of explanation because it is easy to interpret and understand. And that's all for advantages of pictograph. Thank you.
We're here to discuss the disadvantage of using pictograph. We now know that pictograph uses images to represent its data. However, it is harder to determine the data, especially if they add only a part of the image, and that's because the numbers on the data are not in sequence. For example, let's use apple as our image, and the apple represents 5 people. On the table, we have 3 apples, and we have a total of 15 people. Then on the other table, we have 2 and a quarter of an apple. Now, that table is much more hard. It's much more harder to determine due to the um, quarter of an apple because we don't know what the quarter of an apple represents. So it is much more harder for the readers to determine the data in that case. Secondly, we can't see the data between the points or the causality of how much the points has increased or decreased. Unlike line graph, they have uh, unlike in line graph they have lines that connect each points, so we could clearly see of how much each points has increased or decreased. Now, it is best to use a pictograph for those datas that can be easily counted, but it is much more harder to use pictograph if the datas are if the data has numbers that has decimals, or it is represented in percentage or in time. So it is much more harder to use pictograph in those factors. That's it. Thank you.
A pictograph use symbols or pictures to represent values. Each pictures have some value. For example, let's say you want to graph the amount of apples during each day using a pictograph. So in here we have the number of apples sold from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So as you can see, in Monday we have 5 apples, and since we know that each apples equivalent for 2 apples, so we'll know that 5 plus 5 is equivalent to 10 apples for Monday. And for Tuesday, we have 3 apples. So 3 plus 3 is equivalent for 6 apples. And in Wednesday, we have 1 apple. So 1 plus 1 is equivalent for 2 apples. In Thursday, we have 4 apples. And 4 plus 4 is equal for 8 apples. And in Friday, we have 2 apples. So 2 plus 2 equals 4 apples.